Hello, everybody. My name is Raymond Peng, and I'm a digital engagement lead at Google. I partner with customers on developing and executing their enterprise API strategy using Apigee, the leading API management platform. At Apigee, it's not just about software, but equally important to partnering with our customers on their digital transformation. And if you've joined us before, you probably have heard several case studies about customers who have been on their journey for several years. Today, I'd like to take a deeper look with you all and give folks out there a view of what the first year of a journey could look like. Banco Azteca has started their API journey with Apigee just over a year ago, and they've made some really fantastic progress along the way. I've been really privileged to be their partner from Google on this journey, and they have quite an exciting road ahead. So joining me today, I'd like to introduce Emmanuel Salazar, who's a Director of Core Banking Modernization at Banco Azteca, to tell us a little bit about their journey. Hi, Emmanuel.
Hey, Raymond. It's good to talk to you. I'm really happy to be part of this webinar. So just to give a little bit of context about my career here in Banco Azteca, I have 10 years working for the company. I started as a developer, and now I'm in the middle of this journey through this digital transformation that we are looking forward with partners just like you. And it has been an awesome journey by now.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us. And so let's get started. If you're joining us on the webinar, you'll notice that there will be a view like this on your screen. You're welcome to add and post any questions at any time. On the bottom left, there's a Q&A console. And we'll try to post any kind of resources or answers to your questions along the way. And so if there's anything there, as well as questions you might have about some of the technicalities of the webcast, please feel free to do that as well. So thanks again for attending us, and let's get going. The agenda for today is split into a couple parts. The first is we'd like to talk a little bit about Banco Azteca and their digital transformation. From there, Banco Azteca has been using Apigee for a little while now, so we want to talk about why APIs and API management, how they've evolved their API program, any kind of milestones or successes that they've had throughout their journey so far, and especially around some of the challenges and lessons learned. I'd love to hear, Emmanuel, from what those are. And then interesting, ahead, the road ahead and what that strategy looks like. So that's the agenda today. Let me share a slide that I got from Emmanuel when we first started. This was Emmanuel, like a year ago. And I remember when we were doing this presentation and you kicked this off about digital transformation. And it was such a great message. So tell us a little bit about this, the banking industry in Mexico and the Banco Azteca and where you guys are, and what's the significance of this?
Okay, sure. But basically, Banco Azteca is one of the biggest banks here in Mexico. We have 10 years operating as a bank here, but the whole organization, it's called Grupo Salinas, and it has a very long history offering products to the Mexican market. So when we start this project, we were looking how we can give the next step in our banking company to reach more people. We want to engage more customers for the banking platform. So we are trying to find ways to look for those customers where they are. That's like the main message that we are pursuing. And basically what we are trying to do is go ahead and offer more products, more services to our customers so that we can engage with them and they could feel a difference working or collaborating with us as a bank. So basically this digital transformation, it's a big step for the company. It's something that we have been working on for a couple of years. And this is the vision of where we want to move forward. And one of these biggest steps is how we can offer those products. And basically, that's why we start looking for an API gateway platform so that we can expose those services in several channels with different partners and find those customers where they are.
Mm-hmm. So that's really interesting in terms of how, I think the cornerstone of this is engaging customers where they are. And we see this with, lots of our other customer clients and customers in terms of, how they're thinking about being and going beyond their enterprise walls, right? To, like you said, is, your customers are not always at your app. They're going shopping, they're researching out there. So how can the bank be there? And so I think it's also a good point to talk about APIs, as you mentioned, when you're starting to look at an API management platform. So what led you to go from digital transformation, customer centricity to APIs and API management? Like, tell me about how that came about.
So basically, when we start looking for this digital transformation, we have to be sure that we have the right processes in place, that we can handle all of the services that we are offering as a company, and to have a seamless, or to be able to offer a seamless experience to our customers. It doesn't matter which channel they are using. So basically, several areas here in the organization start looking to an API gateway as a way to give governance to our services and how we can expose it. When we start this conversation, we get to a point in which we define that we as a company should have just one platform to offer these services to our customers. So basically, we get together all the IT areas, all the business units, and get to agreement that we need to have this corporate platform that could help us to organize, to give governance, and to be able to deliver the products to our customers. That's the first reason that we start looking for this kind of product. So after that, we realized that the business is looking to have or to explore different business models. So basically, we were like a traditional bank, and right now the strategy that we have is to look forward to a new business models that could explode some of the opportunities that have been being present here in the Mexican market from a few years ago. So that's a reason to have a way to expose these services quickly, safe, with a lot of focus on the security, and with a platform like Apigee, we feel comfortable to do that. And finally, the third thing that makes us thinking about this is that the Mexican regulatory environment, it's going to change. So basically, the next year, there's going to be some regulation around open banking. And the past year, we were looking to start working on a platform that could allow us to be ready when the regulatory environment changes, and could allow us to be able to deliver what it is required by them.
Mm-hmm. Nice. That's a good way to kind of summarize and list some of the key sort of opportunities, right, from a banking standpoint, is that, really the ability to centralize the experiences that you're exposing and govern them properly from a security standpoint, from a traffic management standpoint is critical. You mentioned something about new business models and also about working with partners in fintechs. How does APIs and API management, how does that actually work? What are some of the ways that you're actually using that in practice when you talk about that?
Okay, yeah. So to put you in context, basically, the partners that we have as a bank in the past required to make a specific development to interact with our core systems. We have to put in place some VPN or direct connects to our data centers. And also, it was really kind of hard to explode the capabilities that we already have as an organization, as a bank, through different channels, because we need to make several custom deployments and developments for all of them. So basically, the APIs and the API management system will allow us to make one development, to have the process in place, and then allow business to offer that to any channel or to any partner that they would like to have this process available through. So basically, that's why we were looking for this kind of platform as a mean how we can enable as fast as possible the business to explore these kind of opportunities.
Awesome. And so that kind of ecosystem that you're trying to expand, I think is to us sort of the center point of what API management allows is that working with partners is central to that. So I know when we started, you were looking at other platforms out there.
Yeah.
So can you tell me just why did you end up picking Apigee and how did you get about that decision?
Yeah, sure. So, as you said, we were in a process in which we evaluate several options that are available in the market. So we start looking to very specific points on what we need. We basically were looking for a platform that could allow us to deploy it on premise, but also in cloud. We are also looking to explore these cloud applications and scenarios in which we could have like the products available internally for our channels, but also to third parties. So there, the cloud could help us a lot in order to have it available to all of them. So that was one of the key factors. Then we make a research. We look that Apigee is one of the leaders in the market, and we realized that the product is very helpful. We end up having three big products in the final stage of the decision, and basically what helped us to define which one to choose was the process that Apigee offers to the customers on the engagement of this kind of platform. So basically, we look on the technical specification. It was fine. It covers all what we need, but we also want to be ahead and not only look in the technical part. So we also think ahead and about what it's going to be required to have this platform giving the value that the business needs. So this engagement program that was offered by Apigee was really attractive and really helped us a lot to give the business the value that they were looking for. So basically, those were the decisions that we took in order to get Apigee.
Nice, and that's really kind of how we started working together. I thought I'd bring together this photo that we took, I think several months ago, almost half a year ago now, I think. There's you and the team there, and I thought it was just a great photo of everybody coming together at this one moment. And standing behind you is the Gobierno of the APIs. So for our audience, why did you call this group Gobierno APIs? What does that mean to you guys?
Yeah, so basically when we started and we have the engagement program with you, we started trying to figure it out how we could be able to get all of this knowledge and the understanding that we have from the platform, and that we could be able to spread it across all the IT teams that we have in the company. As a big company, we have more than 1,000 people working in the IT teams. So it's a hard job to get it done. So basically what we end up figuring it out is to have a central team, the one that we call Gobierno de APIs, which is kind of the center of excellence that is going to be enabling everyone in the company. So basically we start getting all the knowledge, from you. So we start making some documentation, start working on the enablement programs and definition of the standards that we want to follow as a company. And we end up having this great area only focus on this program, on the API program. So we handle the roadmap, we have the definitions, we have a slicing that could allow all of the other teams.
Super interesting. And I think that's kind of central to the fact that the governance that you talked about before, Emmanuel, was really about enabling other teams, and you've got a very big organization. And so with a lot of interest on APIs, it's been incredible to see your team being able to spread and to help and to grow the API strategy amongst all the different groups within IT and also in business. Could you tell me a little bit about how your API program is organized then with so much demand and just the resources, I'm sure, are always somewhat stretched?
Yeah, sure. We started small. Basically, we start collaborating with the digital banking team. because they were like the more easy channel to engage in this kind of strategy. They also were looking to have these APIs available. So we start collaborating just with this small group for about 2 to 3 months. That time also helped us to get the knowledge and the practices in place, all the processes that we have defined. And after that, we start creating some small groups, agile teams, that could engage to a project that gives some value to their business. So basically, we approach with every business unit here internally in the bank, and we look for an MVP or an MVBO that we could identify, and then we get assigned to a specific IT teams.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, we replicate the same process that we put in place with the first team, and we start growing in some small cells of 6 to 8 people.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, we start looking on the processes and how we were doing with all of them. We start learning a lot. It was completely different working with one team to another because of the knowledge that they have, the technologies that they use, that they were used to do.
Mm-hmm.
So we were also trying to engage with them, offering these new processes and technologies around test automatization, CI/CD pipelines, the agile methodology, and all of that was offered as a product, as a whole product. We are going to deliver APIs, but also with all of these new processes that we are going to put for the development process. So basically, we organize this central team, and after that, we start identifying some champions of each of the IT areas and start collaborating directly with them so that they can help us to spread the word internally in the IT teams, and that's how we start working.
Okay, great. And so when you were talking about this central team and you started to spread out to different teams, does that mean everybody in your program is working with all these other teams that are coming? And it seems like you're giving them a lot of great practices, not just about APIs, but around CI/CD and Agile and the ways of working. That's also seemed to be changing as well. But how did you split up, the duties of a platform, like running a platform, as well as onboarding and supporting the teams that were going to actually build APIs?
Yeah, that's a good question. Actually, we have a couple of teams working internally in this central area. The first one that I could tell is the one in charge of the platform as an operation team, and also of the CI/CD pipelines. So when a team approach, they are the first contact as they create the repository, the pipelines that are going to be needed to perform the development, and they leave to them the responsibility of the development. Then the second area that we have internally, it's in charge of all the standards and the guidelines about how we need to develop the APIs, and they collaborate really close in the development process of each of those groups that are going to be working.
Mm-hmm.
And the third one, it's related to the methodology that we are going to be following. So one of the biggest tasks that we have is with all of those teams working in parallel at the same time, we need to be very clear and focused on what is going to be delivered each sprint. So we have a team in charge of the methodology, and we keep in sync with all of them, following the sprints and having the demos at the end of the sprint to have a clear view of what have been done during that period of time. So that's how we have been able to keep track of all of them, and that's how we organize the internal team.
That's amazing. So that's obviously a lot of moving parts going on, and so that's also a lot of different teams. How are then you working with the different lines of business? Because I know, at an enterprise, you have the business and you have IT. How is the process in which you engage the business versus the IT?
Yeah, there are different ways to do that. Really, we don't have a single way to do it. Some of the business units are really clear about what they want in this digital transformation process. So they really come with us and talk about what they need, what are the products or services that they are willing to offer. And that's like the easiest way to do it, because when the directive comes from the business, it's easy to align all the priorities in the IT teams to do it. So basically, when that happened, we have a product owner assigned to each project, and we have a Scrum team working for that specific product, and we just keep the methodology to give the visibility about what we are accomplished and when it's going to be available for them to have it on production.
Mhm.
Then we have a second kind of projects in which the IT team is the one looking to have these APIs available. So there we have to make a biggest effort, because we need to get in sync with the business area about if that project that the IT team is looking forward, it's also valuable for them. So in some of those specific scenarios, we are taking the lead on the evangelization process, because we need to explain how it works, why we need APIs, how is this different about what we were doing before. And that's like the first step. So once we get the alignment between business and the IT teams, now we can start working. But yeah, basically those are the two approaches that we have. And as I said, that we have a very huge organization. Each is very different in the way that they are working. So as a central team, we have started learning about how we need to approach to each one of them, depending of the maturity of the business and also of the IT areas. And we need to figure it out how we can get them to the point that they understand what they are going to get and what it's needed to get that value that they will have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's super smart how you're tailoring your approach and focusing really on the business and the customer value there, right? So not just taking directions, but also being a good advisor and focusing on that value. And I think you've seen a lot of success, and it's been a year now, right? So tell me a little bit about what's going on with the API program today.
Yeah, sure. So we have 1 year, as you said.
Yep.
We start in several ways. We focus first in the cloud platform to deliver some of the first projects that we start engaging. We have covered all the organization, the main business units in the organization. We have covered all of them. So right now we have around 50 projects running in this program. Some of them are already in production, mainly for internal channels or to communicate some of our internal IT areas to allow them to use the corporate service that someone is offering. So at that point, something that we really value a lot is the reusability of the APIs that we create. So we have already seen a lot of cost benefits because we are reusing several of the APIs that we have defined. It's also a time saving because we don't have to spend a lot of time in the development. So that's one of the main things that we are looking right now to have this central catalog available to all of them. So each time that a new project starts or something is needed to change, the first task that they need to do is to look into this catalog and see if something that is there could be used by them. So we are in this point to get this methodology as part of all the development process that we have in the company, and it's going to be one of our main challenges. Mm-hmm. So after that, we also make the deployment in our on-premise environment. Basically, that is focused for our branches because we want to have the faster response time for them or all our internal channels. So we have it already deployed. It's working right now in production also. And right now we are looking to start collaborating with some third-party partners. So basically we started collaborating only internal, And now that we are feeling more mature about the platform, about the processes, about what we need to do to have it good APIs available, we are moving to expose those APIs to partners.
Nice. That's very exciting. And so I think that's kind of like one of the biggest milestones ahead. And I know, even throughout this journey, like you said, start small and then scale up. And you're focused on the business value. You've got 50 API programs, you said, projects going on at one time, which is fantastic. So what are some of the challenges that you've faced, when you think about this past year in terms of getting to where you are?
Yeah, so we have several challenges. First of all, the core group started with all the enablement, and they were feeling good. They were able to develop the APIs, but then it was hard to get to a point in which we can have the responsibility also to make the enablement. So as we have several projects in parallel, some of them we were in charge of the development, but some others we are just enabling the team. So that stage of the project was kind of hard because we have to do both tasks at the same time. But after we go through that process, the teams that were enabled allow us to be more focused on the governance part instead of the main development. So I think that's
so it's like a transition between being the team that does it to being the team that enables. And so you were doing both at one time. And I guess that's almost like double duty then.
Yeah, exactly. That was one of the biggest challenges that we faced. Then when we start moving to the production environment, we start deploying some APIs. We have some issues with the platform, mainly because some configuration or specification about the hardware or the IOPS that we need in the disk or the configuration that we have in our virtual machines. So we got to some issues with the platform that make us realize that we need to be very, very focused on the operations and all the configuration that needs to be done in the setup of the platform, and some things that we were missing in the maintenance processes, and also that we maybe were not with all the knowledge about how to troubleshoot some of the scenarios that could happen in production. So that was one of our biggest challenges also, and that gave us a visibility, a really clear visibility of what we need to do to be ready as a team to support the core processes in the organization. So basically, we start working on some playbooks around troubleshooting, around maintenance, around how we can really get a deep knowledge of the platform, not only what it's in the main tutorials or whatever the way the people were understanding the platform. We really want to get deep in the understanding of the platform, of each single component that Apigee have, and that allows our team to get a lot of knowledge. It was the hard way to do it, but we were able to understand it, to get to a point in which we feel really comfortable to start moving some of the core processes of the organization to the platform.
Yeah, I think that's a big tipping point, in terms of when you've done so much work on the platform and you know that you're about to be in production and that there's that traffic coming in, so you have to be ready for whatever could be, up ahead. I think that's to be ready, to have gone through those scenarios, to figure it out, like what we went through with the inventory of all the potential issues and all the different facets of operational readiness. I think that's a pretty good a summary of kind of some of the challenges you face and how you're able to overcome them. So when you kind of look back at where things where you made some of the decisions in the past, us all getting together in that room in the very first days, I remember, and to where you are today, what were some of those decisions, some of those best decisions and practices that helped you kind of get to the point of production and get to that point where you can enable teams and scale like the way you have been?
Yeah, so I think one of the best things to have is this central team that could take leadership about the platform and that also have the governance, we realized that it's really, really important to have this level of governance to get the most of the program. As I said, one of the biggest topics that we have is the reusability of the APIs. So we have this internal team that allow us to do that. So one of the second things that we learned is that we need to have a lot of documentation around everything, from the operations perspective, the CI/CD, the automatization of the testing, and also around the standards and guidelines that are going to be needed, because that allows us really to scale very quickly. When the teams or new teams engage to the program, we have a really good center of knowledge that they can look, they can see a lot of the information right there, and we only focus on the very specifics that they need, and maybe work with them for one sprint, but after that they are able to follow all the rules, and we just keep validating that everything is following the way that we define. So the documentation is key. And after we have this documentation, we start looking that something that it's going to be required to scale even more is to make automatization of everything that we can. So basically, we have a pipeline automated for the user acceptance testing, also for the stress testing, and we are looking to have some scaffolding tools working for a specific definition of the type of the API, the kind of consumer that we are going to have. So the automatization of the processes, it's also key to have this scalability in a big company.
Nice. I'm really glad you said that. I think a lot of our customers who start, they think about going really fast, right? Just like the way, you were talking about, the market is there, the demand is there. So the thought is, I want to go fast, but there's the way that you do it, and a lot of teams are doing it in different silos. They have different teams that are building APIs, and they forget that there's a central component that is about reuse, about developing those standards, about documenting them. And that allows everybody to go faster. And so I'm really glad you talked about how the central team, managing that knowledge, developing those automations, and maintaining that methodology and to drive that reuse across all the teams. I think that's awesome that. And that means you've taken a step to build that foundation before you scale, right? And that's kind of enabled you guys to scale. Taking a look at where you see all the things that has happened, and you've got so much going on with the different API teams that have spun up, and you're about to go external for the first time. What's like looking ahead? What excites you the most, Emmanuel, about where you guys are?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of opportunities that we are enabling the business to reach. Mm-hmm. So basically, we are in the center of this transformation. And once we have presented the project to our CEO or CIO, they were really glad about the progress that we have had during this year. They are looking forward to have even more next year. I think this initial year, it's more like the basis for what we are going to start building, mm-hmm. and that this foundation will really help the business to be able to deliver quicker to the customers, to have the time to market reduce a lot, and also cost savings. So basically, we as a team are feeling like we're really part of this transformation that we are having as an organization. So we would like to have the lead in the Mexican market. It's a huge task that we are looking for, but I think we have the foundation to start moving Banco Azteca to that position with the leadership around the technology, around reaching customers where they are, and founding these new business models that are really viable for us to reach. Other thing very important is that for the development teams, it has been a huge cultural change, because we were used to work in very traditional ways, using maybe all tools, all methodologies, all frameworks, and all of this transformation, it's allowing the teams, the IT teams, to look that there are more opportunities around there, that we can work in different ways. There have been a lot of traction about using these kind of tools, and the IT team is really excited about what we can do. And now the perception about our company is changing, because right now we are looking to have each time more and more the technology, to have it in the best way that we can, and it's really exciting for all of them to be changing the way they are working day by day.
Yeah, yeah. I think that part is huge. In terms of kind of seeing the kind of the excitement. When I see the team and what IT is how IT is shifting to become faster, nimbler, more agile. And I remember even when we talked about doing hackathons, outside. I mean, those things are IT is changing, right? And IT is becoming part of the business and driving that opportunities that weren't necessarily there before. You know, when you were doing the way things have always been, but changing it into a new mindset. So that's incredible. And I also feel like you said, the bar is raised, huh? The bar is raised for Banco Azteca in terms of your next year. And I think that's really exciting in terms of what you're going to see when you externalize your APIs to the partners that are out there. I think that's going to be super exciting. And I hope when you get there, we can speak again, and you can tell me about some of the lessons learned and some of the great achievements that you and the team have made, in the next year ahead.
Yeah, for sure. You can count on that. I mean, that's one of the biggest challenges that we have ahead, and it's gonna be a very, very good process that we are gonna be facing, and that allow a lot of business good things to reach our customers.
Perfect. So I thought I'd just summarize some of the key takeaways. You said it very well and eloquently throughout these questions I've given you. But for our audience out there, kind of some key takeaways, in terms of how Banco Azteca has kickstarted their API strategy. I think one, I'd like to focus on the first point being, focus on the customer, right? Driving customer need and understanding that, to meet your customer where they are. I think the very first point that you made, about why Banco Azteca is differentiating, and leverage APIs to get you there. The second is, I think the takeaway is pick the right API management platform, but not just for the software, but for how you can partner with your API management company and as a strategic partner to help you through the digital transformation. And when you do start small and grow your team, but focus on the first success. That first business outcome is really important to get people's attention, to get the excitement, and so you can scale up from there. And then the other takeaway I had was, a central team and governance is really important. To not forget about the fact that API management platform, the software helps, but the part that's also equally important is to drive reuse, to drive knowledge management through clear documentation of your standards, your guidelines, the CI/CD process, so that all teams that use the API platform can gain from that speed and efficiency. And that central team is really there to enable those teams to go faster, to enable all of them to go faster. And so you're not working in these traditional old silos, but you're using the API governance as like a change agent, right? In terms of changing the ways of working with these teams and getting them all to speed up and connect better with the business. And then I think the last point that you said, or maybe the last 2 points, was automation is the future in terms of being able to streamline your process, whether it's streamlining the pipeline aspect of the testing aspect, as well as streamlining and automating anything that comes to testing standards and quality. So to build that speed through automation. And then the last part is, I think the most exciting part about your journey which is you started with an internal focus, or at least you use APIs internally to speed up the development and the processes within Banco Azteca, but you also see this as an ecosystem where you have a flexible platform that allows you to build that internal catalog, but also to go external and to embrace other partners and fintechs out there to build that open banking and that banking ecosystem to help you gain market advantage. So I think that's also a really important takeaway for those who are listening, and from a banking standpoint of using APIs as a business strategy. So I hope I got that right, Emmanuel, in terms of the takeaways from everything you said.
Yeah, completely.
Okay, thank you. So I think I'll pause for a moment. And first, number one is, Emmanuel, thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me. We've been talking, every month for quite some time, and it's great to have you on this webinar with me and to talk about your experience. You guys have a lot of insights to share, and there will be more in the coming years ahead. So thank you again for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Raymond. It has been a pleasure working with you and all your team during this year. And yeah, we're looking forward to what is coming and really excited about this future.
Great. So why don't we pause there for a second, and I'm going to open it up for questions, and then you and I can take some of them from the audience online with us today. So looking at some of the questions that have been posted, and thanks for everybody who's been attending. I see a couple here. First one is a great question, Emmanuel. The question is Banco Azteca's API program organized around a COE, meaning Center of Excellence, or or more of a federated model? Do you have business area writing APIs? Is the kind of follow-up.
Okay, yeah. So basically, we are not using the term Center of Excellence because maybe that's not the kind of connotation that we would like to have. It's more like a federated model that we are trying to put in place. So basically, we're trying to keep the independence of each of the development teams so that they can realign with the business needs that they receive in the time that they need to deliver. But we are also trying to keep it all considered in a governance model that could allow us to scale and to be able to share the resources that each of those teams are creating. The business teams, as themselves, they are not creating APIs or developing the APIs, but they are really involved in the definition process. So basically, when we start the project, we talk with them and we create a small group with the product owner, which is from the business side, then a technical lead and a QA lead. Those three together are the ones in charge of the definition of the contracts and the user acceptance testings that are going to be the input for the API developer in order to create the projects or the processes that are going to be needed. So they are not actually writing the APIs, but they are involved in the design process.
Okay, great. Yeah, and I certainly would say that that's very similar to what I've seen with other customers as well in terms of the kind of best practices in terms of federating and working with the business. So thanks, Emmanuel. And the second question I think is kind of closely aligned to that is what kind of best practices or guidelines have you created as part of that governance program?
Okay, yeah. So as I mentioned before, we covered from the methodology, all the development methodology, up to the testing automation. So we have standards around how we need to follow the agile processes. We have standards around the pipelines that we are creating. We have some reference architecture that we share with the teams depending on each project so that we can be able to scale in a really controlled way so that we can share the same resources. And for the specific standards in the APIs, we are following most of the standards already available. We are not creating something in particular special for us. So we are following, for example, BIAN, which is for the banking sector, a standard that is already defined. So we can follow that in order to have the governance in the services that we are creating. And also we are following some of the technical specifications around there, like O2 for the authentication, the authorization of those processes.
Okay, great. The third question I see here, which I think is also an excellent question and probably thought-provoking for a lot of those who are starting API programs, is how do you define the strategy to have reusable APIs? I see reuse a lot in the business cases and the strategy and the goals that are from various different customers. Can you talk a little bit about the strategy to have reusable APIs at Banco Azteca?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and also a good point that we need to figure it out in the beginning of the project, because what we need to realize is that we are not putting in the API platform some web services. We are creating processes or products for the business. So from the design stage, we start thinking around the business process more than the specific services that are going to be supporting it. So when we realize that we are creating those processes, we also have created some documentation around how we can reuse some of those steps that are involved through all or through many processes that share those in common. So basically, it comes to the analysis of the business process that we want to share. And for example, a very good case that we have is when we were creating the loan origination process. We started it from a perspective of a very specific product, which is around motorbikes that the company is selling. So it's a credit specific for that kind of motorbikes. But then when we start working in some personal loans, we realized that we can reuse several of the components that we have created. So there we start realizing that we have to make two categories around the APIs. So we end up with some domain APIs that are the parts that could be reused through several processes. And then we create the experience APIs, which are very specific to a product or a business definition. So the pieces that could be reused are the domain APIs and could be shared across several experience APIs.
Excellent. And just to add on to that as well, what I've seen in terms of defining strategy, I've worked with some customers in terms of building their roadmap. And so the way they're building their roadmap is by taking it from a customer or an end user perspective. So I put myself in the shoes of, let's say, a bank customer. What are some of the incidents or the different events I'm going through and the journeys that I'm taking and when I'm interacting with a bank? And we start to look at, which journeys are both the highest pain point as well as the most impact. And we start to see where APIs could support that, because it's about the different channels and journeys that they're traversing through. And then from there, you start to see there's a couple of APIs that probably start to reoccur in many of these journeys. And that becomes, a great way to prioritize, which APIs to go first.
Yeah, makes sense. Mm-hmm.
So there's one more question here, which I think was very similar to something I was thinking as you were talking. Question is very friendly. Hi, Emma. This is Nathan. How are you publishing your APIs for teams to use, and how do you represent the purpose of each?
Yeah, hey, Nathan. I have worked with Nathan some years ago. So, yeah. For the question, we are using the developer portal for the API sharing. So we are not generating any additional documentation or any other document. We are just publishing all the APIs through the developer portal. So there we made available all the definition from the business process up to the technical specification of each of the endpoints that are going to be supporting the the process. So I think that it's also something really valuable because it allows the developers that are willing to use some of the APIs to make it really, really quickly because they have all that they need in the dev portal. So it's very quick to get access and get knowledge about what is going to be done but by that specific API and how to use it.
Nice, great. And I think, first you got a fan base out there, Emma, so I'm also part of that fan base. To follow up on that question about developer portal, I often see that there's a gap, when you first start your API program, developer portals don't exist, and there isn't really a job function out there. Who in Banco, how did you decide, where that ownership lies?
Okay, so the ownership, it's always aligned with the business unit that have the control of the process. So from the beginning, we try to align all the APIs that are going to be supporting a specific process to each one of the pieces in the domain that they belong. So we have to move some things in the definition to be sure that each of them got them available. And then also in the developer portal, we are trying to reflect those business domains that are going to be available and make it very clear which step of the process belongs to which business unit.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the business units really own the APIs that are in the developer portal. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Okay. And what about the developer portal itself, the kind of platform or the the interface and the functionality of the portal?
Yeah, it is controlled by the central team that we have. So this central team is in charge of receiving all the information from the business units around the processes. And then we have a group of designers and business analysts that put together the information, make it consistent across the portal, and create some diagrams or some tools that could help the developers to understand what is going to be needed. That's something that the central team is doing and make it homogeneous through the portal.
Okay, great. Okay. All right, Emmanuel, thank you very much. Looking at the rest here, I think we've covered all the questions from the group, and we're just at the end of our webinar today. So just some closing remarks. Emmanuel, thank you again for coming on with me here. I think behind every success story, there's a great leader. So you are one of those great leaders. I'm super honored to have been able to work with you this past year. There's going to be so much good stuff ahead. And for you and the team there at Banco Azteca. So look forward to doing this again. And for everybody who joined the webinar today, thank you for attending. There will be a recording of this that will be posted in a couple of days from YouTube. I noticed there was a question about that. And if you didn't catch anything, if you missed something, you can always re-listen to that once we post it live on YouTube. And that's about it. Thank you guys all very much, and have a good one.
Thank you so much, Ray.